Welcome back to BAF Racing, and in this video we have another recap from Soar Round 3 Amateur Open Sprint. This race is a little bit special since we have two different races happening at the same time. The front guys over there are the Pro Open Sprint, and the back where I'm in is the Amateur Open Sprint. In context, this is the third race of the day, and the first race, Amateur 600, and the second race, Amateur Superbike, was such a disaster. So my goal in this race was to be a little more conservative. We're starting from the front row, and off we go. That start wasn't the greatest, and I see that Melanie here blocked me on the launch, allowing her to secure P1 going into the carousel. Coming out of the carousel and going onto the back straight, I know that I have a little more horsepower than Melanie's bike, so we're going to try and take advantage of that onto the end of the back straight. Fortunately, that was a good move, making a pass on the outside line, allowing us to secure P1. So at this point I wanted to close the gap between myself and the pro guys running out front. Now they're running a separate race, but I'm thinking if I could put another rider between me and the second position Melanie, that would really help me a lot and benefit me, since this is a pretty technical track and there's not a lot of areas that you could really pass. Completing the first lap and onto the second lap, we're able to slowly close the gap to Niel ahead of us on board his ZX-10R. Now this carousel has been a bit of a struggle for me the whole weekend. I can't seem to get the consistency I want out of that corner, and from time to time end up running wide, just like this section over here, allowing Melanie to make a pass and Jeff Bernard behind me almost making a pass. Fortunately, I was able to outbrake Melanie at the end of the back straight, and we were able to regain that lost position back. At this point, a bigger gap has opened up between myself and the pro rider up front, so we're still going to try and reel them back in and see if we could put a rider between myself and Melanie. Here we go, completing the second lap and onto the third lap of the race. We're still in P1 and trying to reel back Niel ahead of us on board his ZX-10R. Fast forward to the fourth lap of the race. Melanie is still right behind us, and we are slowly closing the gap to Niel ahead of us. And on to the fifth lap of the race. We've really closed the gap, and see here Niel making the move on Nick going onto that kink, and unfortunately we have Melanie making an inside pass into the carousel, causing me to run wide on the exit of the carousel. At this point I wasn't worried yet, since the race is not even halfway through. There's still going to be lots of opportunities for us to make a move. For now, we'll settle down and try to get the rhythm. Like I said earlier, we've had a couple of disastrous races prior to this race where we ended up running off at the end of the back straight. So that's the last thing that I want to do in this race. So I try to be conservative with my selection on where I make a move. So here we go, starting our sixth lap of the race. We're on P2. The good news is we still haven't lost the front guys. And onto the back straight, and I know that this is one of my strongest strengths against Melanie, but it's too far of a gap for me to make a move under braking at the end of the back straight. So for now, we'll sit tight and see if there's any opportunities later on that'll open up, that'll allow us to make a move. And I think in this race, the biggest challenge is making a clean pass onto Nick and Niel. We seem to have a slightly better pace in the corners, but the fact that they are in a more powerful bike makes it really challenging to make a clean pass. Therefore, we would have to make a pass just before the technical part of the track where we can open up enough gap going onto the back straight. And I see here Nick running that carousel pretty wide, allowing Melanie to take the inside line, causing him to check up and losing some drive onto the back straight, and opening up an opportunity to make a pass under braking at the end of the back straight. At this point, I was just happy that I was also able to pass Nick, not allowing Melanie to get away. And now we're going to try and reel him in and see if there's any more opportunities that will show up. Here we go, past the halfway mark. We are now starting our 8th lap of the race. And Melanie here makes a beautiful inside pass onto Niel. And unfortunately for me, I botched that corner exit, making me check up on the throttle and opening that massive gap going onto the back straight. And at this point, I know that I have to make a move on Niel as soon as possible before Melanie opens up a gap that I can no longer recover from. Here we go, completing the 8th lap and on to the 9th lap of the race. Going onto the carousel, I've decided to choose a wider line to see if I could get more drive going onto the straight in an attempt to try and limit the gap that opens up between myself and Niel. But it looks like it's not as successful as I would have liked, because his bike just pulls away such a massive gap at the end of that back straight. And here Melanie's opening up a bigger and bigger gap, so I really have to make a move as soon as possible. Completing our 9th and on to our 10th lap. And fortunately for me, I see Niel running wide going onto the carousel, so I try and take advantage and make an inside pass in the carousel. But unfortunately, Niel's ZX-10R is just way too powerful on the back straight. It just blows me right out of the water. I was not even close enough to outbrake him, so we're back to chasing him around and try to see if we can make a move. At this point, Mel has checked out, and now there's a pretty big gap between myself and Mel. And to top it off, we only have a few laps left to get the job done. And here we go, finishing the 10th lap and on to the 11th lap of the race. I think it was at this point in the race where I figured, you know what, it's been a pretty rough day. I've ran off at the back straight in both my races, and a second place finish in this race wouldn't be so bad. So I kind of dialed down my riding and just go and finish the race. And fast forward to finishing the 11th and on to the 12th lap of the race. And on to the final lap of the race, we have Chris here leading the Pro Open Sprint race, lapping me in the finish line. And right behind, making a pass, Kyle here running second place in the Pro Open Sprint race, lapping me at the back straight. We got a few more corners to navigate to finish the race. Unfortunately, this is not the race that I would have liked, but a second place finish on a rough day where I've had some pretty disastrous results isn't so bad. And finally, crossing the line in second place, and we have Jeff here finishing at third place as well.